Around the Ozarks is now on your FM radio. Listen to Around the Ozarks mornings with Grace Gooley as I spotlight local people, stories, and podcasts, all while playing the country legends of the 90s and the hit makers of the 2000s. It's on the Ozarks' best country, 105.1 The Bull.
Welcome to Beyond the Gate, a podcast sharing the grit, growth, and spirit of rural life. From fields to front porches, this is where the heart of agriculture comes alive. Today we go beyond the gate with a man who knows the legal world and a little bit about rural life. Attorney Travis Elliott is here in the studio. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Well, we're going to talk about agricultural law. But first, let's jump to the fun stuff. Who is Travis Elliott?
So I was born and raised in Dallas County. My mom and dad worked out as many farmers in southwest Missouri. They farmed on the side, right?
Yes.
And we had a cow-calf operation, still do, on our family farm. I need to get that Century Farm application in for my folks.
It's pretty simple.
It really is. I've had it for forever, but so I'm proud of that family farm. So one of our family farms is by Plaid, you know where that is, and then we've got my wife and I, Holly, have a farm in southern Dallas County where we've lived for almost 17 years, and so we run some registered Hereford mamas there, and we've got some horses and cats and chickens and sheep and 4 children.
And kids,
Hadley, Emerson, Hudson, and Sawyer. So
a few irons in the fire.
Many, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Century Farm. You mentioned Plaid, Missouri, which very few people would know where that I do know where that. It's not even a fork in the road where that sign is.
That's right. There's an old conservation fire tower there. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Now, is there? Lead Mine has the Mennonite store, but isn't there one in Plaid? Or am I?
There is now.
That's what I thought.
It's actually east of Baileytown, which.
Oh, I don't know Baileytown.
Yeah, there's just a church there. So.
Baileytown. I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah.
So, raised in rural Missouri, southwest Missouri, lessons in rural life and that influence that may have led to your career path.
Sure. Lots of people go to law school because they have high-minded ideas about changing the world. And really, I grew up very practical, right? You grow up on a farm and everything's practical. It's about how do you make things work? How do you find a solution to something that, may not have an obvious solution? And so I really wanted to do something that I knew I could, get married and raise a family in Dallas County. That was kind of my motivation, and I was always interested in politics and government and the law, and I thought what a powerful thing the words are. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did. I went to Mizzou and spent 7 years there. The only 7 years I spent out of Dallas County, actually.
Really?
Yep. And so went there for undergrad and law school and found a home at a firm that I started at in 2007, and now I'm a shareholder there. And this is my 20th year, actually. So in August.
We're old.
Well, not yet. Just everybody else.
Everybody else?
Okay.
Right. Okay. We're just growing with them.
That's right.
Your wife Holly and I went to college together, and I didn't know who you were at that time. When did you guys meet? Where'd you meet?
I actually met. She was still in college, and I had just started practicing law in Springfield.
Okay.
It was a blind date.
Who set you up?
Actually, a runner at our law firm was still in college, and so they set us up.
Yeah. Well, and Holly is that very small percentage who gets to marry someone with the same last name.
Yeah, she saved me $15 at the recorder's office.
I've heard that story.
I know. I've told that before, right?
It's good. It's a good story.
Yeah, it is.
Gotta keep
it is. It obviously causes great confusion because of her father, Dr. Elliott.
Yeah.
And, they think they think that I'm his son, and I'm like, well, actually, no, I'm his son-in-law, and then people are confused. And, so we went on a blind date. That was in 2007.
Yeah. So I graduated college in 2007. I think she's a year younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, small world.
So, and that's one of the reasons why I appreciated our friendship, because it kind of precedes you and my friendship, right?
Yes,
but through
absolutely.
Holly and Dr. Elliott, and that's a special thing. And, of course, your dad. And
Yeah. And that's what's really cool about these ties. The different people I sit down with, there's a connection to all of them. Some of them I just meet for the first time with microphones in front of us,
sure.
recording on the record. But there's a connection. And I think that's the power, like the cliches, what's the connections with
7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yes. Yeah. The 7 degrees of separation. Like we're all connected in
sure.
agriculture. When you go agriculture, Missouri, we're all connected somehow. And tying this in, we all know each other somehow, and those connections run deep. And so that's pretty cool.
Oh, in fact, you just talking about that made me think of, being a small town kid off the farm going to Mizzou. I mean, it was eye-opening. And one of, at Mizzou at the time, that dorm is now torn down, but it was...
That's when
the way it was set up, is 2 levels were kind of shared community area. And so there's a catwalk. So one floor would be boys and one would be girls. And so there's a young lady I met there by the name of Dana Staley, who was a state FFA officer at the time.
Yes, I know the name.
And we were very good friends. And through that, I met her sister and her family and her sister's husband, Brent Hayden, who I'm sure you know.
Yes.
And one of my favorite stories she invited me over to their house for 4th of July while we were in college, and we were shooting trap out of the back of a pickup. And Brent had a brand new pickup, and I was throwing the clays, and I had an errant clay go right down the side of his brand new Chevy pickup. Oh. And I felt like about that big, and I apologized. I'm like, I'll pay for it, whatever. And now 20 years later, Brent and I work together. We, his practice is a little bit different than mine is, but we have that ag commonality. We have the county commonality sometimes. And so that's just, like you say, the connections there that started, 24 years ago. And I would consider Brent a good friend now,
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of neat.
Well, I went to A-Lot, was in A-Lot with Brent.
Oh, were you in the same class?
We've got to be great friends.
Yeah.
Still. But tried and true, when I still, jokingly text him, I was like, got my 2 attorney friends, 3 actually, Kevin Roberts.
That's right.
State fair chair, or former chair we work with. So it's like, you 3 are on speed dial. You never know when you're going to need
That's
you.
That's right. It's always more fun to get in trouble than it is to have to call the lawyer after you get in trouble, though.
That's right. I haven't gotten in trouble yet.
That's
but
good.
We might need you down the road.
Right. I'm not that kind of lawyer, though, so.
But you can make a connection.
That's right.
See another connection.
It is.
Yep, you can
important.
hook me up.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go to law school. You start with the firm that you're still with,
Yeah.
and now a shareholder. What point in your career were you like, I like it? This is what I want to continue doing, and it's not just a job.
Yeah. It's a great question because honestly, I didn't have any lawyers in my family. I didn't know any lawyers. The only lawyer I knew was Judge Cody Hanna, who was the Associate Circuit Judge in Dallas County. He was a family friend. I had no idea what practicing law even meant or looked like until I got in law school and started clerking. And so, it's kind of God's grace that I even liked it, because I had some colleagues, some good friends who they passed the bar and they didn't want to do it anymore, And our practice is unique. What I say for Springfield, Springfield's not a huge town, but it's growing. It's not a St. Louis. It's not a Kansas City. It's not a Chicago.
But for us, it's the metro.
It is, for sure. But for our firm, I kind of laugh. We don't do any of the things that I think the average person oftentimes thinks about lawyers doing. We don't do criminal defense. We don't do family law. We don't do divorces. We don't do child custody. We don't do tax law. And you list those things, and those are oftentimes the things that the average person runs into.
Would say, what else is there?
What do you do? And so, our firm is kind of based in labor and employment back in the 70s and 80s, obviously before my time a little bit, but our firm was primarily a management side labor firm back whenever private sector unions had huge influence in the workforce, and contracts were being negotiated, picket lines were being formed, breaking picket lines and all those things. And then, of course, Reagan deregulated the unions, and then Congress started passing things like the Family Medical Leave Act and the American with Disabilities Act and Title VII. And so our firm kind of became labor and employment. And so that's what I knew going in. And one of my partners represented a lot of school districts. One represented a lot of hospitals and healthcare entities in rural Missouri. And so that was kind of how I, got my start. And, I like it. I love what I do. There's a song about find what you like to do and call it work. So, yeah. And then I was fortunate, I taught ag law at Missouri State for about 10 years, and that was fun because you don't deal with a lot of young people in the practice of law,
right,
especially in what we do. And so it was fun to see kids who, were interested in agriculture and passionate about it. And of course, I had the opportunity to have a young lady who was a student first and a TA, and then she went to law school, and we recruited her, and she's one of my partners now.
Oh, that's a cool story.
And so Paige Perrick, she's a Polk County girl, born and raised on a cattle farm, and we stayed in contact, and she got out of law school, and I told my partners,
Was she a state officer?
She was.
I think in blonde hair.
Yeah, kind of
was.
Yeah.
I think yes. Mm-hmm. She was there. She was, yeah.
Yeah. So again, those connections,
I can picture her.
Yeah. She was the student member of the Board of Governors at Missouri State, actually, too.
I think so. I think I'm talking about the same person. So, why we're talking about agriculture's our passions, even though we both work outside of the agricultural fields. But rural life encompasses landowners, farmers and ranchers, rural homeowners. All those people constitute, living in the rural lifestyle. But what are those basic understandings of their rights? What do they need to basically understand? Those simple things that would tie it all together that many wouldn't realize are important.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we've seen, even in my career, over the course of time. I mean, more people are moving into rural Missouri than ever before. Most people are used to, either renting or owning a home on a lot in town, right? Everybody's fairly close together. And one of the things I think a lot of people don't recognize whenever they go to buy a piece of ground, build a house, buy a house, like property lines aren't obvious, right? And so getting a survey is important whenever somebody goes out, because just because the fence is there doesn't mean that's where the property line is, right? And we see a fair amount of disputes about that.
I want to get into fencing.
Yeah, and I know you wanted to talk about that later, but I mean, that's one of the obvious things to me. And in our practice, I mean, we do a fair amount of real estate work, and we've had our fair share of those property line disputes or fence line disputes. And so that's probably one of the most obvious things to me whenever you talk about, the rights in rural Missouri or anywhere.
So those boundaries, property boundaries, easements, and then access roads, things that you don't necessarily would think of when you're living in the city limits. Why do those topics become so prevalently discussed?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have multiple people in a space, whether it's a large or small one, they find a way to disagree sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And people probably in general don't really understand, like you mentioned an easement, and we see this pretty commonly more if somebody has a 40 or an 80 and maybe they're going to split it off and sell part of it to someone else. Well, people don't always think about, well, how do you get there? How do you get there from the county road, or how do you get there from the state road? And so, the easement rights are important both to the person selling the property as well as the person that's buying the property, and making sure that you have proper access and figuring out who's going to take care of it, right? Do you have
who's
responsible for mowing? Who's responsible whenever it gets washed out by a frog strangling spring storm? Who's going to bring new gravel in? Who's going to grade it? And the thing that always comes up, which is who gets to trim trees, or who gets to trim the flower bushes that are next to the easement, because people get really strong feeling about that kind of stuff.
Well, and don't you think a lot of that becomes emotional?
Oh, it's very personal, and I mean, probably for people in rural Missouri, I mean, there's that connection to the land. And so whenever you start messing with their land, it feels like you're attacking them or their family member, And I mean, oftentimes it is somebody's property that's been in their family for 100 years,
So you kind of going down the easement track. Does an easement transfer with the sale of the property?
It
you
depends.
Inherit that?
It depends.
You have to agree both sides?
Yeah. So I mean, the best case scenario with an easement is it's in writing, it's recorded, and anybody that wants to can go to the recorder's office and see that easement exists. And it should be described, and it should be clear what it is for, and sometimes what it isn't for, right? I mean, just because you give an easement for a road doesn't mean that you're giving an easement for a utility line or a water line or what have you, right? And we we see those kinds of disputes come up fairly frequently. And the easements that are bad are the ones that are just verbal, the handshake across the fence.
Which would have been historically all there were.
Completely fine and all that there was. That's exactly right. A little bit off topic, but we had a very long running case that the whole dispute was over an easement from 1911. Oh. Well, folks wrote easements differently and were less concerned about the worries of the world today than they were in 1911, right? And so it's kind of interesting whenever you get those cases and you have to literally go back and read what was written then, and that's what the court is evaluating to decide whose rights.
And place judgment on it.
And place judgment on it. That's absolutely right.
And there's probably little precedence for something for that age on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because, writing legal documents is very technical, and the courts really parse words and look at what did the parties say at the time.
My eyes are already glazing over.
I know, right? Yeah, and the jury's eyes do too. I can promise you. It's hard.
Speaking of jury, I want to be your juror. Please figure out how. I want a fun case. I want to.
You want like a runaway juror kind of scenario?
Yes, I want something. My sister got to do one last year, and I was so jealous.
So the flip side of that is I had a good friend who got called to serve on a jury, and it was out of another county in a different part of the state, but because of the subject matter, they pulled a jury from Greene County, and they were going to have to be in this other jurisdiction for 9 weeks.
Oh, well, that's hard.
And and they were going to take their cell phones away, no laptops, day or night. They were going to be sequestered, and he was having a stroke because he's like, what am I going to do?
Okay, yeah, I would need to get out of that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why he called me. He's like, how do I get out of this? And it's like, you need to do your civil duty.
But see, I don't know. I could never be gone for 9 weeks.
Oh,
my family,
can you imagine not talking to your family, not answering the questions?
Would die.
Yeah. Where did I put this?
Where's this? Oh my goodness. I can't
what are we doing tomorrow? Today?
Yeah, but I just want to do like a 1 week.
Right. At home.
In
Laclede County.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to experience it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it's obviously important civic duty. I mean, there's nothing more important than voting and serving on a jury,
That's
It may be painful personally, but just keep in mind, your pain serving is a lot less than the pain of the people who are the parties to the lawsuit, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's heartfelt. That's hard. That's a tough conversation because it is. We just want to pass the buck for someone else to take care of you. It is our civic duty. I hope that I don't ever get called for a 9-week one out
of county.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Okay, fence law. Okay, so you mentioned that you were a per course instructor at Missouri State in the College of Ag, teaching ag law. So before you were teaching it, I took that class while I was in college.
Was that fun? It turns you off to any possibility of law school.
It did. Because I don't know, I possibly thought of it. Because the very first thing you said earlier on was the power of words. And my brain, I may work for a bank, but my brain thinks in words and pictures, and I'm a creative. And I love the power of words. And that it resonates with me. I don't think I ever would have gone to ag law or gone to law school or anything like that. But that class, oh man, it was brutally boring, and I did not do well. The case studies you had to read, and they were like photocopied from 100 years, and it just droned on and on.
Oh, and I have a million stories, but I'll just tell a couple about ag law because, I mean, keep in mind, I was a newly minted lawyer whenever I started doing that.
Passionate. Everybody should care as much as you do.
That's absolutely right. And, I mean, I had these high expectations of these sophomores.
And it's a night class.
Juniors. Oh, yeah, for 3 hours, right?
Yeah, because you only meet once a week.
Yeah. And so, I had all of these writing assignments and these essays and all of these things, and I was going to help these ag students, and I mean, everybody has to.
It was hard. It was a hard class. And the gentleman that taught it before you had been there a long time. And it was hard to make it entertaining enough for me to care. It was real.
And honestly, if I'm just being blunt about it, I mean, I probably made it more fun than it should be sometimes.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure you did a better job. I wish I would have taken it with you.
One of the things that some of my students laughed at me is at one point I said, y'all are wildly out of control. And like, I still know and interact with lots of them. And they still bring that up now. Because, I mean, like, it's an opportunity to get to know young people who are interested in ag, right?
Yeah,
so
you really are all there for the same reasons.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I was pretty laissez-faire. I mean, like, if people didn't want to show up to class, like, okay, I mean, that's fine. If you don't want to show up, that's fine. I mean, there's going to be a test at the end, and if you can pass the test,
that's all that
good
matters.
for you, right? I mean, it's not the warm body checklist. Like, just because you're here doesn't mean that you're getting any value out of it, right?
That's right. That's right. But the one thing I did remember was fence law. Not that like I have it memorized, but I related to that because I was like, oh,
it's relevant.
That's why we just rebuilt that fence at home. Is because it was 1 foot away from the actual property line after an assessment was done. So we have to talk about fencing because there's fences everywhere, keeping people in and out, animals in and out. Why does it create so much confusion? Yeah.
Well, Missouri has kind of an interesting setup. There's a bifurcated fencing law in the state of Missouri.
Is this the whole like fencing
in and fencing out? Right.
Yeah.
So there are, and I've kind of lost track. It's either 18 or 19 counties in the state have opted into the local option fence law, which is the fence out. So those are the counties that I guess you would conventionally say are more livestock producer friendly.
Okay.
Because, in all the other counties, so there's 114 counties in the state. So, about 95 of the other counties, the rule is that if you have livestock and you need a fence, then you build the fence.
You are responsible.
That's right. You're responsible for it.
Or keeping your livestock in.
Right, not keeping other people's livestock out. And, there's some mechanisms in the fencing law for if right now you have livestock and your neighbor doesn't and they're not agreeable to paying for it, there's a mechanism where you can actually record the cost of that. So if they're just waiting until you build the fence and then they go, oh, suddenly I want some cattle, right? Or I want some sheep or goats. There's a mechanism to accommodate that. My experience is I've never seen anyone actually do that, but it is there as a tool. There are tools. You just have to, it's like any tool, you've got to know that it exists and how to use it in order to do that. I mean, for us, I'm pretty old fashioned. If I need a new fence, I don't worry too much about the neighbor. I mean, if they have an interest in helping.
If they've got livestock on the other side, 50-50?
Yeah.
That's typically
But if they aren't going to do that and it's going to be a fight, like, it's worth, I just need the fence. I'm not going to worry about them.
But the law states
that
they are responsible for half, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I always have to go back and look because these issues legally, they come up. But, people always think that there's this right-hand rule where you walk to the middle of the fence and you face each other and you're responsible for the right half and the other party's responsible for it. Some of those concepts exist, but they're not always as clear as maybe, because if the other side isn't keeping their side of the fence clear, what are you going to do?
Right. Or I want the flat land, you take the hilly side.
Right.
What?
Yeah, that's right.
So fencing out. States that are fencing out states like out west, Colorado, Wyoming, and that means that if you want your property protected from the livestock, you have to keep them out. Am I correct?
Yep, that's right. And I'm obviously not as familiar. I know generally other states, but I know for like I said, about 19 counties in the state. That is the law in those counties is basically if you want to keep people's livestock out, you have to build a fence. But it is a distinct, some of those states out west still have open range. Missouri doesn't truly have open range, but it does have the local option fence out or the general fence law.
Would this come into play? We think of the wild horse herds in southern Missouri. That if you wanted those wild horses off of your property, you would be responsible for keeping them off. Yeah, there's nothing you could go to make the state or whoever's protecting them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Although I will note that if you look at a map about where most of the local option fence law counties are, they're almost all north of the Missouri River.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
I would have just guessed
Southwest Missouri, right?
Yeah.
Yep, it's not. There are some in Southwest Missouri, but most.
Any counties off the top of your head that you know are? Put you.
If I said, I'll be wrong, so I'm not going to do it.
Okay, yeah, you are on the record.
I know, right? It can and will be used against me.
Good lawyer speak.
later.
I just want to throw you off.
That's right.
Okay. So, any other, the most common disputes on fencing? Have we covered those?
The one you said,
Okay.
I mean, it is not uncommon for a fence to be off from the property line, just because historically, whether it's topography, hills and hollers.
It was easier to do it this way back then.
That's right. And of course, I mean, think about how much easier it is to clear out a fence row now if you've got a skid steer or you bring in a dozer than it was 60, 80 years ago. I mean, people were doing that by hand, right? So it's not surprising that those are off. I would say that is the most common dispute between landowners.
And then, like, you own 100 acres and then you sell off 50 here and you threw up fences which were convenient for you, but then you're selling off.
That's right.
Does that come to the responsibility of the seller or the buyer to make sure it's correct? Or
So good question.
I don't know if it's dumb.
So,
ask it.
whenever you're selling real estate, I mean, and I'm sure you guys have, but I mean, there's that seller's disclosure statement.
Sure.
And it depends on how much information you disclose and what you know about, because sellers can have liability under the law if they fail to disclose something that they know about, or if they misrepresent the thing that they disclose, right? And so overall, what I would say, I mean, if I were buying a piece of open ground or probably any piece of rural ground, I always think it's important to walk the boundary and see what does it look like, on the ground. But the safe practice is to get a survey before you buy a piece of property to actually find out,
What are the steps of doing that?
So typically like the Board of Realtors standard form residential real estate contract, I mean, it has a provision in there that, the parties have a right to get a survey. And so once you've agreed to purchase the property for a price, most real estate contracts have some due diligence items like a title search, which everyone is going to get because they're probably financing and their bank's going to require them to, even if they didn't want to do a title search. But a survey is another piece of that due diligence. And, sometimes the parties will split the cost of that. Sometimes the sellers say, I don't need a survey, so if you want one, you can pay for it. And then it's, reaching out to a reputable local surveyor and getting them to.
And is that at the cost of the buyer?
It depends.
Okay.
The contract dictates that. Sometimes it's 50-50. Sometimes it's 100% to the buyer. It just, again, it's a term of negotiation between the parties. But I do think that a survey is really helpful because you can then take that survey and whenever you walk the property, that it's documented. And if there's an issue, you know about that before you close on the property. And a survey issue is under most real estate contracts justification for not closing on the property. So if it's a big enough issue, you can say, push the pause button here. Can we work this out? Can we resolve it? Will the seller contact the neighbor to have it corrected before you close? Because what people don't realize is once you've closed, it's your problem, right? Now, it may not actually be your problem, but I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is if you ever buy a piece of real estate and you get your title policy, nobody reads their title policy, right?
No.
They throw it in a file maybe.
Yeah.
But what you'll see is in most standard form title policies is there's an exception that the title policy of insurance is not going to cover a property line dispute under the title policy unless you get the survey and you have them remove that exception from your title policy. So then somebody else is going to be responsible instead of you. And of course, the problem with most property line disputes is if they go to court, they're very expensive. And I mean, I hate to say it and tell on myself and my profession, but hiring lawyers to fight a battle that may last a couple of years ends up being cost prohibitive for most people, right? And I mean, it's a zero-sum game too. Like even if you win, you still feel like you've lost because you're out all this money. So getting a survey, getting a title policy, and having that exception
Cross your
removed.
T's, dot your I's.
That's right.
CYA.
It's good insurance. It's good preventative medicine.
Let's talk about livestock liability.
Okay.
What should livestock producers, any size or shape, any species, understand about liability if an animal gets out?
Yep. So as I was telling you before we went on, I've had a number of these cases that I've defended over the years. And I mean, it's like anything in life. it's risk mitigation, right? And you've kind of got to look at how do we mitigate risk and what's the cost to mitigate with that step, right? And so you want to pile on a couple of different strategies in my estimation. So from my perspective, having good fences, a good legal fence, whether you're in a legal fence.
Okay, legal fence.
You're going to ask
strands.
It's number of strands and it's a distance, and I can never remember the difference between the general fence law and the local option. But I mean, MU Extension has a really great resource on laying that out. It says how many strands, how many stays you have to have, how far apart your posts can be from one another. You'd think I'd know that by now, but it's one of those things.
You should have come prepared.
I should have. Shame on me.
I was going to guess 5 strands, but I do not know how many feet.
That's the part I always struggle with.
Yeah.
So, but having a good fence and maintaining your fences is kind of the obvious thing. I think there's a couple of other things that you should do. I mean, having a good farm liability insurance policy at appropriate coverage levels for the size of your operation, and probably not only the size, but your actual location. So like, I'll give you an example and tell on myself. We've got a stretch of fence that adjoins like 4 or 5 different property owners along the stretch. And so I've been trying to clear out fence rows. And of course, that can sometimes be dicey too, right? People get cranky about fence rows being cleared out sometimes. And so it takes time. And so I think if you're next to a high traffic paved road, like your risk is higher than if you're down in the sticks and, 3 cars pass by the gravel road that's rough as a cob on a good day, right?
Yeah, versus, property that butts up against I-44.
That's absolutely right. And I mean, Holly and I talk about that regularly. Like we'll see, big operations next to high traffic interstates and stuff. And it's like they have more
10
risk.
Strands. 10 strands.
I mean, you have to weigh cost. But I mean, so I think that good fences, I think a good liability policy, a farm, make sure that the policy you have is actually going to cover your risk, right? Because, probably your homeowner's policy probably isn't going to cover that risk. Now they might, but it's not because the policy is designed for that, right? So having a good relationship with your insurance agent and making sure they can answer your questions before you bind the policy, that's really important.
Well, and to think about those things before they happen.
That's right. And usually farming is a matter of like, what is the emergency right now, right? So, I mean,
what do I need to fix today?
What do I have to fix today? Not what do I need to fix today, right? And so, like, if you have a fence down, if you have a water gaps are hard.
Oh.
Especially in the spring.
Okay, let's talk about those. Which way the water flows, does that matter? Liability or...
I mean, I think that the problem, so the cases that we've seen with livestock getting out, and I think, in fact, every case that I've ever had has been livestock getting out, it gets on the road, and a vehicle hits it.
Sure.
And then the person claims that they've been injured, right? Both the physical damage of their vehicle, but also personal injury, right? And usually what it has come down to is, did the property owner... Was the fence down, from a lack of maintenance, or, was it livestock breaking the fence down, or did something really wild happen? I'm going to rabbit trail here for a second. On the way to our family farm, it is on a gravel road, but I will guarantee you the first time it gets slick every winter, someone will drive through that fence and they will just drive off and leave it.
That is why I was getting ready to ask that question.
Yep.
Who's responsible for that? You don't know who they were.
Yeah. And so what happens is, and the reason I brought that up is, I mean, it's different if you know your fence is down and you're like, I'll do it when I get to it. And then you get livestock that gets out and then somebody hits them and you have a lawsuit, like your liability there is greater, right? But if a third party drives through your fence at midnight and nobody calls you, and nobody ever calls you, right?
No.
They just drive off. Your risk or your potential liability is lesser there because, I mean, the position you would take is you would say, look, that fence was perfectly good yesterday, and some third-party actor beyond our control drove through it, didn't call anybody, didn't report it, and so we wouldn't have had any way of knowing. So your defense gets a lot better in those situations where it's the cause of somebody else than it is through your negligence or your lack of maintenance. We had a case one time where somebody hit a cow, and I mean, it hurt them, killed the cow. And we never found out who owned the cow. Like the farmer that they thought that owned the cow, like he's like, it wasn't my cow, right?
So who knows how long of a jaunt that cow went on to?
Yeah. There's 2 times in the year where a farmer doesn't claim a cow, right?
Yeah.
It's on January 1 and whenever somebody hits one.
Oh, is that a good attorney joke?
I mean,
you should use it, yeah.
It's funny because it's only partially true, right?
I have never not claimed.
Me either. See, you're on the record too.
Oh, dang it. Okay. Always. Let's switch gears a little bit. Hunting leases, ponds, other types of, I don't know. What do you do if a pond goes to a property line?
Yeah.
Who's responsible for the maintenance of the pond if you want to clear it out and your neighbor doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, I think that unless there is a written agreement in advance dealing with that issue, it's literally going to be a work it out with your neighbor. Because, I mean, we had that situation where the property line of actually the farm that Holly and I live at, the fence line went straight across the pond. So one half of the pond was on our property and one half was on the neighbor's property.
We have a farm this way too.
Yeah. And we never had an issue there. Ultimately, we ended up buying that piece of property. So now we own on both sides of the fence. So that's an easy.
How you solve the problem.
That's how you solve the problem. But I think that, to my knowledge, there's no provision in law to address, a shared pond. I mean, the law is a little bit more clear whenever you talk about streams and rivers and what have you. But lakes and ponds are not well handled in the state, and it's usually a good reason before you buy a place like that to have conversation with the seller, maybe have a conversation with the adjoining property owner, and say, hey, how have you all done this? Because I mean, that ounce of prevention is truly worth a pound of cure. I mean, if there's going to be an issue like cleaning out a pond, I mean, there's some risk there, right? I mean, even if it's holding water and you think it could do better and you clean it out, it may never hold water again, right? So that's what I would suggest on shared ponds for sure.
Yeah, well, I think that the answer with my next question, just to bring up another topic, is the same thing. We've got to communicate with our neighbors.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's easier said than done. But the next topic, hunting leases, I think a lot of them are informal and they're the handshake. Grandpa always let us hunt this land. Next generation's like, I want to hunt this land. Or personal to me, back our Century Farm in Laclede County, when we, started operating it and moved home, I drive down the county road one day, gravel road, and there's someone in a boat on our pond fishing.
You're like, who is that?
And I was like, and it's a big pond, but I don't know if he really needed a boat, but I'm like, who are, Carl Jane just, and I was like, okay, ask. Like, don't, just, he's been gone a long 10 years, maybe long, he hadn't been gone that long yet. But anyways, there's situations where the communication happened decades ago.
Yeah. As a person who prides themselves on their name, good reputation, and a handshake is good enough, it pains me being a lawyer sometimes because the right legal answer isn't always what common sense dictates, right? And so, I mean, what I say, if you want the legal answer, if you're going to have, whether you're acquiring hunting rights or you're giving hunting rights, like putting it in writing is a really good best practice because everything else is less good, right? And I'll give you an example. I knew some folks here, and this has been years ago, probably, but within the past 10, 12 years ago, who knew somebody who asked them if they minded if they hunted on them. They knew them, and they said, sure. Well, I don't remember if it was that year, but it was within, a fairly short period of time. They found out kind of in a roundabout way that these folks were literally selling, subleasing their hunting rights to other people, and they were paying them for it.
Land they didn't even own.
The land that they didn't even own. They weren't paying for the hunting rights. They were just letting them use it, and they were subleasing out. And so, I mean, like, that's not
That's shady.
Yeah. That's not that wasn't the basis of the deal at the beginning. And so I think getting in writing it protects everybody, especially if you don't know people. Like, if it's friends and family and you think everybody can be reasonable and be responsible and act with integrity, like, I still think that a handshake is good enough in those scenarios. But if you have any question at all, putting it in writing and making sure that both parties agree about what the terms are is really important, because, I mean, there's people who are leasing out just deer season leases and leasing out turkey season leases to other people.
Or just bow season.
That's exactly right. And so, but you're right. I mean, communicating with people in those situations, it solves so many problems. And even if they disagree, well, it's better to know that they disagree before you've done something that they don't agree with than it is after, right? Because it gets out of control. I mean, it's like, have you ever watched a train derail? Like, whenever it's to derailment time, like, it's too late, right? Like,
there's no brakes. There's no stopping.
Well, yeah, I mean, whenever it stops is whenever it falls on its side and, you pick up the mess. So I think that's good practice, and it's so easy to do.
Sure.
Now, it may be unpleasant.
Sometimes they're hard conversations.
Yeah, they are.
Keeping on the topic of property rights, eminent domain.
Yeah.
That is something that many probably like, well, it doesn't impact me. I don't care. But it's a topic. So when we talk about eminent domain, and that's one thing that, anything can become emotional, but there's a lot of feelings with that because it is deeply personal if it happens to you. So any stories you have or cases you've handled with eminent domain and advice?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things you always, and thinking about it as a producer or as a landowner, I mean, we have property rights in America in the state of Missouri. And so anytime that a government entity or another entity that is authorized with the power of eminent domain, I mean, at a minimum, they have to pay you fair market value for whatever right or interest they're taking, right? And so there's very clear processes for that under the law. And if they don't follow them, they don't get to take your property. I think one of the struggles on the kind of the personal piece of it is if you end up owning property that is subject to eminent domain, like, at the end of the day, again, whether it's a utility or whether it's a government entity, like, there's not really a provision in law, as long as they follow the law, to say no, right? It's a done deal. If they check the boxes, it's a done deal. And that's hard to accept. I mean,
because you're like, that's mine. That's not fair.
That's right. And that's how our system of government has decided how we're going to balance the public interest versus private property rights. Is it the right balance? I mean, I think there's a fair amount of debate. I mean, I think Missouri and the legislature has been pretty good about trying to update the eminent domain laws to address some of the issues that we've seen more recently in the state and across the country. Is it perfect? I'm not going to say that, but is it better than probably some other states? Yeah. One of the things, though, that I've been on both sides of this professionally. I mean, we've represented clients where they've had to, like a road widening project. We didn't actually have to do it, but I mean, we were headed in that path. And I mean, it's hard. I don't feel good about being like, hey, well, we're going to have to take some of your property to widen this road. But one of the things that I recommend any property owner who's facing the possibility of an eminent domain is at least go talk to a lawyer that knows what they're talking about with eminent domain so that you know what it is you're dealing with, right? Because it's a scary word. I mean, most of my clients, they won't even, my public entity clients, they won't even speak those words because they don't want to go there, right? If it's the choice between doing the project and having to do eminent domain, they're not going to do it. No. Yeah, just because it's not a popular thing, and understandably so, because to your original point, it is very personal, especially whenever you talk about family farms, I think.
So I'll bring up pipelines. Potentially utilities, but no, I'm not talking about your co-op. I'm talking about potential need for energy to go East Coast, West Coast, through your state, through your property. Some of those topics that have not hit us here at home in Southwest Missouri, but other parts of the state have.
Oh, for sure. And I always think that keeping perspective and a steady hand is really important, even though it's hard sometimes. The more personal it is, the harder it gets. But if you think back in the 30s and 40s and early 50s in Missouri, whenever REA came through.
Power.
Yeah, the first time. And I mean, I don't know. I wasn't alive then, but I think most people in rural Missouri were happy about that and excited, right?
But it impacted them personally.
It sure did.
And when there's conversations about pipelines or whatever that might go through that is just
passing through. I mean, it's grain belt, right?
Yes.
I mean, that north of the Missouri River, that has been 8-9 years now. And I mean, there have been lots of fights, lots of disputes, and still more to come, because that line is, at least as originally contemplated, not going to service the grid in Missouri. It was passing from Kansas into Illinois and on east. And I think that's what's really spurred some of the legislative proposals and changes in more recent years about, hey, we need to decide where we're going to draw the line on the rights of eminent domain in the state. If it's benefiting Missourians, I think most people are willing to have that conversation, even if it may be painful. But whenever you start saying, well, this is going to benefit us not at all, and it's going to...
No paycheck. Nope.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think that's to me, that's a real public policy discussion that we as Missourians and our legislators have to have is, where are we going to draw the line here?
Another potentially controversial topic is concentrated animal feeding operations. Colloquially in ag, we say CAFOs. They can create a strong opinion on both sides, right?
For sure.
From legal side of it, from the property rights standpoint, why do these situations become so complex?
Yeah. That's a big question.
Okay. Well, let me dumb it down. Dumb it down. Let me go back to why is there a balance between that farmer who wants to expand and is looking at their business, their property, their operation, their farm, and then that neighbor?
Yeah. Well, and of course, you have to think about all the other people who like to eat as well, right?
Sure.
Because that's part of what we're talking about. And I mean, I think what we've seen in many of the more recent examples where if a CAFO is going to be located in a more densely populated area, it's by its very nature going to draw more opposition, right? I mean, the more people you're around, and that's true, it's not limited to CAFOs, it's limited to any issue that might even be perceived as controversial. And the flip side of it is we see people who have operated large feeding operations who are out in the middle of nowhere, and then people move there, right? And then you get into that coming to the nuisance argument that we hear a lot about. And at the end of the day, it's the same issue, just a different subject whenever you talk about balancing private property rights with the rights of other people who are either nearby or potentially affected, right? And
okay, so Missouri's desirable. Okay,
sure.
We
land's cheap, plentiful water.
How do we? And I want to welcome anyone and everyone that wants to come to Missouri, but it does change the way we view things.
For sure. Yeah. And I think why some people have such a hard time is because it is a complex topic, right? Because you do have the property rights piece, you have the water piece, you have the discharge, the smell, the noise. I kind of laugh whenever we go to Colorado about every year and we drive across Kansas, by the big feedlots, and first few years, my kids were like, "What's that smell, Dad?" And I told them, that's the smell of money.
Money, absolutely.
And so now anytime we drive by a feedlot, it doesn't matter where it is, they go, "That's the smell of money."
That's right.
Yeah, good for you guys. But I mean, it's hard because it's complex, right? Because there aren't easy answers, because balancing tensions is never going to be easy. If it was, everybody would do it. And I think that what we've learned in animal agriculture over the past, probably in my adult lifehood, is we have to be good stewards, right? You have to be good stewards. You have to be responsible. You can't do foolish things and expect people to like it. And at the same time, like we've seen this. I mean, it's why A-Lot's a good organization. It's why I love the state fair. I love what you do. It's an opportunity to educate people who may not know any different, right? Because, anyway.
Well, I think that when we're talking about the food we eat, I don't know, I had a stat several years ago, but we're at least, the general consumer is at least 5 generations removed from the family farm. And a decade ago, in the ag communication world, we would talk about how we are humble farmers and we weren't telling our story enough, and because we didn't know we needed to. Everybody was connected somehow, and so now there's fewer and fewer people connected to what it means to raise a crop, raise a herd, produce, sell. And so now that we have those fewer generations connected, the story is more and more important. And I think that it all comes to the bottom line of communicating.
For sure.
And that power of words and how consumers can relate to that story that we share of what we do daily, for them to understand why we might need to expand or why we might need to. And then the other side is being stewards of the land, and you mentioned that. Document, research. There's so many programs and organizations out there to help a farmer know what to do on their farm, whether it's rotational grazing, whether it's equip and all those different things to make sure the fencing is there.
We've come a long way, right?
Yeah. But even that tool you talked about using when it comes to pricing out that fence, if you don't know that tool is there, how do you know to use it?
That's right. And I think a lot of producers, I look at our family farm, and I mean, I've said this for forever. We are not what I would call a particularly sophisticated operation, right? We do a lot of things the old-fashioned way, which is not always the best way, right? And I think what we've seen, and I'm always excited to talk to producers who have been progressive-minded about practices, and saying, well, what is actually working? What have you tried and what's actually working? And then them sharing that with others is really helpful. And I think that the ag community has done a much better job of that in the past 20 years than they probably did the 20 years before that, and probably the 20 years before that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe a little more lighthearted. Have you ever had that moment where you thought, I cannot make this stuff up in practicing law?
For sure. I feel like it's at least once a week that there are things that, like, there's some that jump to mind that I probably can't say. But yeah, I mean, people are funny and maybe not always in a ha-ha way. Like, you just see the things that people do and you go, did that really happen? And it's like, yeah, you can't make it up. I'm going to have to think, though, a little bit about a really good one that I won't tell on myself.
And then maybe you'll come up with one. Rural communities have always operated on this trust and relationships. Do you see that changing?
For sure. I mean, everywhere. Holly got a little bit of data of U-Hauls in Dallas County, and there's more U-Hauls of people moving into Dallas County than there are out, right? And I think that even though maybe the statewide population doesn't necessarily reflect that, there are more people from other places, from other backgrounds coming in than there ever have been before. And, some critics, and I'm probably one of them sometimes, like, please don't come to my home and tell me that you want to do it the way that you did it where you came from, that you tried to get away from, right? And I know that's kind of a harsh truth, but it is true. And so, but I think, kind of going back to the relationship piece, I think most people who come to Missouri, and particularly rural Missouri, like, they're looking for something different. And so it's an opportunity.
Do you feel more people are jumping to, or more willing to litigate today than the past?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that the truth is a little bit more nuanced than that. And my quote that I alluded to, I don't know if he actually said this or not, but I attribute it to him. I said, Mike Tyson said that everyone's brave until they get punched in the face. Mm-hmm. And that's how a lot of people feel about disputes and lawsuits if they feel like they've been wronged. Well, I'm going to get me a lawyer and I'm going to show them who's right or wrong. What they don't think about it, that they're still at home plate. They haven't gotten a base hit yet.
Yeah.
And so they don't realize how expensive and how just stressful litigation is. And it takes sometimes years, and the cost of that. And so I do think that people are quicker to resort to the legal process than they ever have been before. And it's partly because their neighbors don't know each other. They don't have relationships with one another. They don't communicate with one another. And so it's easier. And I mean, look, social media, everybody likes to beat on social media, but it has contributed to that where it's a lot easier to get on social media and bash somebody than it is to go and knock on their door and be like, hey, I saw that you did X and such or said so-and-so, and I take issue with that, and here's why, but I'd like to talk to you about it and see where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. Nobody does that. Now, if you're friends with someone, you might. Mm-hmm. Right? You might say, hey, I saw that you did X, Y, and Z. Like, what's going on? Yeah. Like, you'll do that with your friends and family. But if it's a neighbor that maybe you wave at them while you're feeding cattle and you got an issue with them, are you going to go and knock on their door and talk to them? You should. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's clearly the right answer, but it's uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable.
And people don't respond well to uncomfortable circumstances.
No.
The good news about practicing law is I'm in uncomfortable circumstances all the time.
So you thrive on it?
I do. I thrive on it. Holly would say I thrive on it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so difficult.
And I start sweating.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
Okay, so let's look at the future. Do you see any trends that in rural Missouri as a whole, the Midwest, when it comes to not your practice, but your line of work that might concern you?
I mean, the thing that a lot of people talk about is AI, right? And I think that that's true of lots of professions.
Intellectual property rights.
Yeah. I guess what I would say about rural Missouri, though, one of the things that I think has been helpful, and I would liken it to rural electrification, is the rampant availability of broadband in rural Missouri has been a big asset because I think now our kids and young people can probably access and do more things and still be at home, be on the farm, and do things that they historically probably had to pack up and move somewhere else. So I think that's a great thing for the future, right? You can run a business from your home now where you probably couldn't always do that, or at least not in the same way. I think that that's a real positive. Talking about AI, I think that lots of people say that there's lots of white-collar type careers that are toast. I'm probably not as doomsday about it because, I mean, we have used some of those tools. We've tried some of those tools out. And the thing that a machine can never replace is reason and judgment and discretion and relationships. And so I'm probably a little bit of a naysayer. I'm not saying that's not going to change what it looks like. But I mean, I think some of those tools are going to be useful for rural America too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whenever you look at, and I'm less expert, other people are better to be able to talk about it, but you look at the use of GPS with row cropping and how much more efficient they are. And I mean, that's because of technology,
that's right?
I mean, it's just the human brain and body can't be as precise.
Well, there's only so much time in a day. There's so much capacity.
That's right. And that precision, And so I think there's lots of good things that come to rural Missouri because of technology, if it's used appropriately, responsibly. Because one of the things I feel really strongly about is finding ways to make opportunities for our children in our communities and not making them feel like they have to go somewhere else.
That's right. And I think that's true. You've lived that. You were gone for 7 years out of Dallas County, and that was it. And that was to go to school and educate and come back. And I think that's what coming from Laclede County, grew up in Lawrence County, you're Dallas County, you want people to come home. You want them to go and live and learn and experience and bring skill sets back.
Yeah, but you don't want the brain drain where they leave and never come back because they find better opportunities.
There's nothing to come back.
That's right.
2 final questions that I like to ask everybody, similar. So Travis, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
The sooner you figure out what you're going to be about in life, the better off you are. That's what I tell my kids all the time.
Okay, I'm digging deep into that now too.
Well,
thinking.
I mean, because think about, and you can even back it off at any age, right?
Yeah.
A 6th grader, like my daughter's a 6th grader, and that's sometimes a tough time, right?
It is.
And I'm like, if you figure out what you're about, and you don't worry about what everyone else thinks that you're about, then you're going to be a lot better off.
Yeah, that's so true. We both have 6th graders, and I was joking to her today. I was like, last day of school, I said,
Was today the last day for your oldest too?
Yes, yeah. You couldn't pay me to go back to junior high. Oh my gosh. And she's had a great year, but it's hard. Yeah.
For sure.
Figure out who you're about today. Listeners, if there's one thing that you would like our listeners to walk away with based on our conversation, what would it be?
What a good question.
I like to throw tough questions that I don't have to answer.
That's right. That's why you're asking the questions, right?
That's right.
Because see, normally I'm the one asking the questions, and I don't have to answer any questions. That's normally what I say. Well, I don't have to answer the question, right? I mean, I think that people, regardless of whether you're in agriculture or not, like if you're not and you're listening to this, like that's a good way in, right? And that's one of the reasons why I love that you do this, because it's a good opportunity for people who may not know, right? And so educate yourself. I guess that's what I would say is no matter what the subject is, people need to learn to know what they're talking about before they have too strong of opinions. Because I feel like right now in society, people are really bad about that. And so I would encourage you to know what you're talking about before you have too strong of opinions.
Before you pass judgment.
That's right. It's like the old adage of, you got to walk in somebody's shoes a mile before you figure out what they're going through, right? And so I think that's what I would suggest.
Travis, you're a wealth of knowledge. We could talk all day.
It's been fun.
The power of words, right?
Yeah.
The power of words. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much, Jamie.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Beyond the Gate. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. New episodes drop every other Wednesday. For more content, follow Around the Ozarks and Beyond the Gate on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe to the daily newsletter at aroundtheozarks.com. Join me next time for more stories of grit, growth, and the spirit of rural life.